Uh, let's just start pointing in the direction of the Newcastle game, because if we're being honest, it's going to be very monumental sort of a face-off. It's got all sorts of extra weight on it. There's the whole narrative behind the scenes. But I think just from a footballing point of view, it's going to be an interesting one to have a look at. Now, if we have a quick look at the Newcastle performance there in the most recent game, hopefully this should come up for you here. Yeah. So they're the stats against Villa in the 0-0 that Newcastle had. 16 shots to Villa's 3. 3 on target, where Villa had 3 shots and 3 on target. Newcastle had 61% of the ball, a good lot more passes as a result. Their accuracy and their passing better. Less fouls than Newcastle. But at the end of the day, it's a 0-0. If we just take a quick look at how they lined up, Jan, this is how they went on the day. Nick Pope with Dan Burn and Cher in front of them. Trippier and Livramento, unsurprisingly. Joelinton, Tonali and Guimaraes, unsurprisingly. Barnes, Elanga and Gordon, the sort of slightly new look or changed up front line. And on their bench, they could call on Asula, who's probably likely to get more chances this year. Jacob Murphy, Lewis Miley, they've got Lewis Hall there, Sven Botman, the new boy, Malik Thiaw, Emil Kraft, Aaron Ramsdale, who's also new, and Park Sung-soo. So just before we start talking about what Liverpool are going to look like against this lot, what do you make of them as a potential threat on the day? You see that lineup, that 11. The first thing that I think your eye goes to, if it's anything like mine, is that midfield. It's quite the unit, Jan.
Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing you missed out from that game against Aston Villa is the red card for Aston Villa, which obviously makes a lot of the stats go in the advantage of
Sure.
Newcastle, because he played almost half an hour against 10 men, but couldn't score. Now, that wasn't really a surprise, was it, Trevor? When you look, Isak not playing, Callum Wilson has left. Who was going to score their goals? Especially when you go to 11 against 10 and they're pushing Aston Villa back. Where is that, that born goal scorer? They would be better suited to play in an away game on the break in transition because of the pace that they have, and Anthony Gordon, whatever. So there is people thinking, because Eddie Howe somehow did it with Joelinton, who came as a £40 million striker who couldn't hit a Ballon d'Or, and he's now turned him into some kind of a bouncer in midfield, but he does very well for them. And a lot of people think, could he do the same with Anthony Gordon, turn him into a central striker? I don't think so. I think it's something to do with wanting to play there, isn't it, Trevor? And I think Anthony Gordon's going, I don't have to, because I'll play wide. I'm also the best wide left player we've got, isn't it? So I don't have to work at becoming a central striker. So again, I don't know quite what Newcastle will do, Trevor, and I've been at St James's Park a couple of times when they do this. They make the games unbearably hectic. It just becomes hectic from the first minute because of the noise from the stand, because of the way that they play, because of all the fouling in midfield and the energy and the intensity. And I've got a feeling that they're going to do everything they possibly can to unsettle and unruffle Liverpool. It's going to be one of those, I think, mad games of football.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right on that. It's hard to say how it could be any other way. And let's rewind then and sort of restructure our chat a little bit back towards where we were at the start. We have a little bit of time here in this last period to talk about Liverpool's 11, Liverpool's team, talking about the new boys. We've looked at some of them individually. We've talked about that. Let me just go back to this idea of a midfield. I saw a tweet going around during the week, Jan, or whatever they call him now on X. And it was a picture of Dom, of Grav, of Mac, and our new boy Flo Wirtz. And it was who's in midfield or who's getting dropped against Newcastle. And like I've said to you already, I for me, It's Cody's getting dropped.
Yeah.
That's how I see it, because I'm trying to look around the team. Wirtz is not going to play. We're obviously going to be trying to do things, and as you said, work our system through this kid. You can't miss out on Dom's energy, can you? And he brings a lot more than that. Let's be honest. Gravenberch is, if he's half the player he was in the first half of last season, is kind of essential to us in there as well. And McAllister's our best midfielder. I don't think there's any doubt about that. We see him with a little statuette last night again in the team of the season. So, do you see any way that he can manipulate his pieces around the board and not have those four that we mentioned? Is there any way that Gravenberch, McAllister, and Dom Szoboszlai don't start, in your opinion? Is there something I'm not seeing?
Well, I think if the four you've just mentioned, the one he might not start will be McAllister, due to the nature of the game. But it always makes me wonder, Trevor, because when you look back last season, and I think the Manchester City away game was the most high profile, where we kind of went 4-4-2 and we went long because they wanted to press us. We went long and we had great success, didn't we? So I just wonder whether we might decide to play a bit of a 4-4-2 with Mo and Ekiteke central, and we're just going to go long because they'll want to press, won't they? They'll want to get the crowd up, and Ireland might just decide the best thing to do is to go long. I would be amazed if we just carry on from the Bournemouth game. I think specifically we'd have used all these days leading up to the game to prepare ourselves for this challenge, because it is a unique challenge.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting. I only get a chance to glance at the chat. It's more for you guys to entertain yourself most of the time here, because we have an awful lot to get through on this show. We always do. And the conversation tends to flow. But I do see some concern around how the team may be operating. Someone mentioned the work rate that Bournemouth had was higher than ours, not something we'd be used to seeing. But there are mitigating circumstances there, aren't there, Jan? I mean, we do have Gravenberch to reintroduce. We do have a McAllister who's only on the road back, and maybe some people were surprised to see him start in the last two games and so on, but maybe that's the best way to get him up to fitness. And of course, there is the situation where you have this new wild card in Wirtz, who has undeniably got a high work rate, but may not necessarily be good at those particular aspects of the game, like screening and cutting off passing lanes and tracking runs and all that kind of stuff. So it is, to come full circle back to the point you made earlier on, it's going to be growing pains, isn't it? People are going to have to find that balance between themselves, and that just takes game time.
Yeah, and I also think it's something to do with the fact that we had Jurgen Klopp as our manager for a while, where it was very visible that we used to outrun the opposition. That's what we used to outrun them, we used to outmuscle them, we used to outsprint them. And so many times last season, Trevor, we kind of discussed, well, how did we actually play? What was it that we did? Because it isn't always as visible as it was when Jurgen Klopp was the manager. So there's a lot more tactics involved, and I guess there is a sort of change in which players are going to cover the most ground for us. What positions are the ones who are going to cover the ground for us? So yet again, I think what a lot had to do with, Trevor, that for the people who remember, we'd always convinced ourselves that we were back in 1987, hadn't we? Wait till we unleash this team. It's going to be bang, bang, bang. Well, the difference was the 87 team hit the ground running, and everybody looked like they've been there for 100 years from the first game. That wasn't quite the same on the other day against Bournemouth. Hence the reason that people are getting worried. But also, there's so much information available to you these days, Trevor, that in between games, you can get yourself into a panic mode, can't you? Where you're thinking, well, look at this and look at this and look at this. I was always recommend, Trevor, and for you and for your mental health, isn't it? Is that watch the games, do your podcast, and make sure the next generation of Irish kids get the right education, Trevor. Don't worry with too much to do with football in the week. Just look forward to the games.
Yeah, man, there's a lot of wisdom in that, and very well that's pretty much the same philosophy I have. I wanted to talk to you about a related matter because obviously we're going to be under pressure regardless of the presence of Alexander Isak because they have plenty of good attacking footballers and a lot of power running through from midfield and passing as well. And we saw a distinct weakness at the heart of our defence there. Virgil not looking at his absolute primo best. But we saw an Ibu Kanate who was miles off it, almost comically bad at one point on the defending on the second goal in particular. But there had been a lot of loose moments previous to that people just seem to have forgotten or didn't mention that were really apparent to me as I'm watching it, thinking I'm going to have to talk about this game immediately afterwards. And the word on the streets is that the contract is going to still continue to be an issue because it hasn't been signed. Apparently, the received wisdom is that an improved offer went to Kanate's people and that wasn't accepted either. Now, this does present us with an issue because if we're going into the season and we get Mark Guehi and we've got Guehi, Van Dijk, Ibu Kanate and Joey Gomez, and even allowing for the fact that Kanate and Gomez have ongoing issues and the Virgil will need rests. If you have the kid there and he's top level and he can come in, we'd be relying on that. We could all go into this season thinking, well, if they could stay fit, there's no better group. You'd be really happy with that.
Mm.
But if you've got a disgruntled or unsettled or a lad whose eye is not on the ball or who's had his head turned by a Real or a PSG, that's an issue. Now, I'm not attributing that to Ibu Kanate. I don't know the man's personal mind state. Things he's saying are good. He's training very well. He seems to be happy. And I don't want to read too much into one bad performance, Jan. But it is a little bit of a concern for those people. Again, you don't have to be a worrier to be concerned that, like, could he go at the death? Could he go in the last day or two of the window? You know where I'm going with this.
I mean, yeah, it's not fair based on one game, Trevor, but it was a horrendous performance, wasn't it? From the moment he was anywhere near the ball, you thought, wow, he's just not on it today. One of the things that impressed us, I don't think I'm allowed to say us, Trevor, was how the three players last season carried on regardless of their contract situations.
Yeah.
Virgil, Mo and Trent. And I think that was a real feature. But I also think that it was kind of different for them, weren't they? Because they'd done it, they'd shown to the world what they were capable of, and they just carried on as normal. Whereas Konate is a little bit different. So, yeah, I think it's possibly rattled him. The fact that, well, you have to assume that him and his camp are thinking that Liverpool won't want to pay them what they want. So eventually it'll end up with him leaving and most likely on a free transfer. Well, we know how the press is going to grow. If that's the case, the nearer we get, we know how the press is going to grow. Is he capable of that? I don't know. I doubt it. So I worry. I don't know what he's capable of.
Part of me wishes he was grumbling in the same way that Virgil and Mo were doing and making loads of people nervous that they were off and that the club were off their heads and they weren't going to do the right thing. And at the end, everything gets done. But, you remember all the controversial moments, especially with Mo Salah. Part of me is wishing that Ibu was doing the same. At least it would show that desire to really want to be part of the club going forward. Again, we can't read too much into it because there's not enough known about it, but it is certainly complicating the transfer window situation for sure. Look, that's not going to go away until, we're on the 20th of August. We've got at least another 10 or 11 days of this nonsense that we have to wade through. At least one more show where we'll have to talk about it. Who knows what will have changed by then. But one thing we always do at the end of each show is get your idea for how you think the game is going to go. Now, there are a lot of factors at play here, man, but very interested to hear, to finish us off here, how you think the big game against Newcastle will go for the Reds.
Yeah, so we had a little look at their lineup before, Trevor, and we had a look at their bench. And I know a lot of focus has been on Isak, but they still got some good players. That is a strong squad there. And the one thing that immediately catches my eye is the strong bench, which means that they'll probably be able to continue that intensity for the full 90 minutes because they'll make some really good substitutions from the bench. I think it's going to be a very, very difficult game to control. McAllister again, he might be the one who misses out. Really, what we need is McAllister at his best to be able to control the game. I think it's going to be difficult. I think it's going to be a difficult game to control. They're going to be putting everything into long throw-ins, free kicks and corners and intensity and noise, and obviously the fans won't be happy. I think we come away with anything from that game, even without a recognised goal scorer, which they haven't got one at the moment. I think if we come away with anything, considering everything that's involved in this game, I think we'll do well.
I am going to go out on a limb and suggest that you are suggesting a 0-0 or a score draw of some sort.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, we want to have a bit of entertainment, so my first things would be a 1-1 draw. But I think it'll be a proper sort of old-fashioned, energetic, physical game. You know, they're going to throw everything at it.
Let's hope there's one of those Stan Collymore moments at the end for Ekatike or Mo or something like. We'll lean into optimism. But as ever, Jan, I wanted to say thanks. It's great to get the season off to such a flying start. Looking back on the first game of the season, looking forward to the second. Feels like we're really in it now. Feels like we're back in our groove. And for answering all the questions and taking us in all the directions that I always drag you down, thanks very much.
Every August, Trevor, this bloody transfer window, isn't it? You know, it just throws a spanner in the works, isn't it? But we're nearly there, Trevor. 2 more big games to go before the window closes.
It's mad how we just want it done at this stage. It is remarkable. I hope you've been listening to the wisdom of Mr. Jan Molby there, and you're going to minimize the worry between now and when we speak to you next. I'm going to try and take that on board. Forget about football, watch some movies, read a book or something until Monday evening, and ignore how everyone else is doing. That's the plan anyway. Let's see how we get on with it. Jan, I'll be back with you next week, probably Thursday. That's our prediction, but we'll be back with you soon to talk to you about the Newcastle game and look ahead to the Arsenal one and all the other bits and pieces. Until then, good luck.